Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. Today, I'll bring you an article. Why are people obsessed with Dave Meltzer? Written by Jesse Collins of Voice of Wrestling. It was uploaded May the 15th, 2024. My goodness. The Brits. I think this is mostly a cultural issue as we'll go through it. But British wrestling fans, have mercy. Please stop it. This is one ridiculous article. All right, this one is ridiculous. But we're gonna have fun. So, one of the reasons why this Jesse Collins believes that people dislike Dave Meltzer, you must protect Dave Meltzer. He thinks that people don't like Dave Meltzer because he spent 40 years being committed to the truth. He's committed to the truth. That's why people don't like Dave Meltzer, according to this guy. So this article is pretty long, so I'm just going to skip through that part. The opening part was Meltzer as an avatar of truth in pro wrestling, etc., etc. So, but then we get to this. Wrestling as a cult? It's a question. The term cult gets tossed around a lot, but I think it's easy to imagine certain groups of wrestling fans as a cult. Part of becoming a cult member is to become disillusioned with anything outside of the cult that may contradict the central beliefs of the cult. As such, cults have a long history of fighting with the media. Since media is supposed to be focused on informing the public of the truth, which may contradict what the cult members believe. So they're trying to set the situation up where I'm going to protect my sacred altar of I'm going to protect the sacred altar of Dave Meltzer by proclaiming that anybody who is against Meltzer is in a cult. Brother, let me tell you, not in the cult. I promise you. So he continues. Another aspect of cults is, in order to help rally internal support from members, the creation of an evil other, an outside person or group of people who are working to undermine the beliefs of the cult. Oftentimes, the outsider is a manufactured figure who is working to conceal the truth by spreading lies. Let me tell you this. Nobody thinks that Dave Meltzer is evil. Nobody. People who don't like him don't think that he's evil. They think he's a shyster. They don't think he's evil. They think he's a liar to a degree. But they don't think he's evil. I think we have a different relationship to the word evil. All right. Is it true that people have galvanized around not liking Meltzer? Yes. But that's partially due to Meltzer's status and the fact that he is on the Mount Rushmore of wrestling without actually working in the business. Now, it's crazy to me that when fans, and he's going to talk about podcasters like Eric Bischoff and Bruce Pritchard later. I'm going to skip over that because I'm not reading all that crap. But when somebody like Ole Anderson goes after, Dave Meltzer for never working in the business and yet thinking he's an authority on things. When somebody like Al Snow does it, are they part of the cult too? Or is it just guys like me who criticize Meltzer all the time? Because I can give you a good reason why I don't like Meltzer, and I'll get into it eventually in this same episode. I'm not going to make you wait. But this is not a cult behavior. And this is why I say I think this is cultural. This guy's British. All right. Now, in England, they have state-funded media. The state decides what's true. All right. The states decide if the media is the arbiters of truth and the media is controlled by the state, then the state is deciding what is true. That is completely different than the United States. In the United States, we question everybody. All right. We go after God. We go after the government. We go after the media. We go after everybody. There's a reason why the skeptic community and all that kind of stuff comes from the United States. Because we, in our in every bit of our history is rebellion. This is why Marxism works so well in the United States, because rebellion is baked into what we are taught as children in the United States. We are not taught to venerate the state. Both Democrats and Republicans, the left and the right, both learn a healthy distrust for the state for different reasons. But the healthy distrust of the state and anything that is seen as an apparatus of the state, whether that be corporations, which is usually the media, or defense contractors, or anything else, voting machines, people start asking questions. It's a cultural thing. In the United States, we question wearing masks during COVID. Why are we wearing masks? I don't want to do that. In England, in Australia, in Japan, they just did whatever the government tells you to do, they just did it. But in the United States, we were like, people walk around with masks off. Like, what are you talking about? This is the USA, baby. I ain't doing that. So I look at this as a cultural issue. This guy, British guy, a lot of the British side of wrestling media, they really, really, really venerate Dave Meltzer. Dave Meltzer is the be-all, end-all for these guys. While in the United States, he is more and more becoming a laughingstock because people are questioning him, because people are paying more attention to things that he says and poking holes in it. Because we're saying, look, it's just Dave Meltzer. He's nobody. He's never done this stuff. He doesn't really know what he's talking about. I mean, maybe he's good at, coming up with a history story here and there. Maybe he's good at, this or that, but there's other things to which he's not very good. And we don't forget that stuff. While these guys who are used to, well, the media can't lie to me. Oh, you're a fool. You're a goddamn fool. So let's continue what he's saying. This is ultimately why Meltzer has become presented as an enemy of the industry as opposed to someone who has dedicated themselves to making it better, because he holds old carnies accountable. Meltzer is not a carny, by the way, despite the fact that I'm not gonna spoil it. I get there, but because Meltzer tends to hold old carnies accountable, quote unquote, he is, again, an arbiter of truth. We should build a statue for Meltzer, for God's sakes. What do you mean? He's the Abraham Lincoln of wrestling media. Old honest Dave. It's George Washington of wrestling media. So let's get back to this thing. Meltzer threatens to undermine the faith that many fans who otherwise wouldn't know any better have in certain sources, whether that be old promoters or wrestlers or active wrestling companies themselves, from completely controlling the narrative and opinions of wrestling fans. So then he goes into what they call the Conrad verse, where basically guys like Bischoff and Pritchard and others tear into Meltzer and say that he doesn't know what he's talking about and he's stupid and all this sort of stuff. Which, I think what this guy, if he was intellectually curious or interesting, he would note that when you talk to somebody like Meltzer, one of the reasons why people don't like Dave Meltzer is because he talks to one party, promotes it as the truth, and then puts it out there. He doesn't get both sides of the argument. Okay? He looks at one thing, says this is true, and then puts it out there as if that's it. He talks to one person or two people, and then that's it. That's the story. That's the position. Does he often does not even ask the subject to comment. He doesn't send them an email. At least when it comes to phony real life media, they will pretend that they're going to give you a fair shake. Meltzer doesn't. I'm going to get into why I don't like Dave Meltzer. In my opinion, Dave Meltzer mixes fact, opinion, assumptions, and one-sided narratives all together. Now, some of that is not his fault. When he's on his radio show just talking about the show as he sees it, that's his opinion. When people take his opinion as fact, the 5-star ratings for matches, or whatever the case may be, and they're putting it out there like it's a report. When he's throwing out an assumption that this thing is going to happen, or I think that thing will happen, he's just talking like you and me. But these people are taking everything that comes out of his mouth as gospel and putting it out on their platform. And he knows that. And he doesn't stop it. He doesn't stop. He doesn't say, let's get into the opinion portion of the show. Let's talk about the fact-based stuff that I can prove, that I've got receipts, or at least I've tried to talk to people about. And usually in media, there are differences between people who do the news and people who do the opinions. Those are usually not the same people. Now, that's becoming less and less likely over time. Now you see news and opinion essentially coming from the same source, but now you're starting to see that stuff come essentially in the same article. The news and opinion mixed together with assumptions and and all this kind of stuff, a lot of mind reading, a lot of that kind of stuff, right? And people cannot parse the thoughts. What's fact? What's opinion? What's an assumption? What is, historically accurate? Who did you talk to? I know, in the media, I don't have to reveal my sources. I get that. But you could at least say someone close to the matter, someone within WWE. This guy said, or something. And if you only got one side of the story, you could at least say, according to this person, it's not the full story because I haven't talked to the other side, or whatever the case may be. You can put that out there. But Meltzer often gets one side of the story and puts it out there as fact. You see, he's done this numerous times. I wish I could think of one off the top of my head. I'm not taking any notes, so I wish I could do that. But I'll give you a good example right now. As a matter of fact, now that I haven't thought of one. Meltzer recently chastised the wrestling media, Fightful and PW Insider, right? Because Triple H went out there after Backlash and lambasted the media and said that they're not credible. Basically, that PW Insider and Fightful are not credible. Meltzer went on his podcast and did 30 minutes on the sad state of wrestling media. About how, the wrestling media only asks softball questions, and how him and his girlfriend were sitting together in Hawaii, and they were sitting back, and she's in real media, whatever that means. Because I saw Joe Biden get, interviewed by CNN, and, all the softball questions that they asked. I saw the same thing with Obama. It's to be expected at this point, right? A lot of media is co-opted. But she's in real media. She's in real media, Mongo. In any event, she was disturbed at the lack of hard questions in wrestling media. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, that's a good point. Let's say that's your position. How come Meltzer has never broken any major stories in the last 10 or 15 years? What was the most major story Dave Meltzer has broken in 10, 15 years? He didn't break the Vince McMahon thing. Somebody else did that. Even something as small as CM Punk jumping to AEW, he didn't even break that. For a journalist to be on his perch saying you're not doing your job right, you're not asking the tough questions, is he doing that? Is he going out getting the stories? No. Then you can say, well, he did that in the past and now he just wants to sit on his podcast and give his opinion. Okay, I can buy that. You can say, look, I am retired from digging up stories. I'm just now going to do editorials. I'm going to sit around and shoot the shit with my friends and watch this stuff. And if I enjoy it, I enjoy it. If I don't, I don't. But I'm not putting out any more reports. I may occasionally do an obituary or something like that, but that's what he should do. He should formally retire, say, I'm not going to be out here doing the private eye stuff anymore. I'm not looking for any stories. I'm not going to be emailing anybody, asking any questions or anything like that. I'm just going to sit on my podcast and talk with Brian or whoever is on the other side of that microphone. And guess what? Nobody will care. Because he's not the one breaking the stories anyway. This whole transgender thing with AEW. Now, part of this is because WrestleNomics is friends with the guy who works in AEW. That's just, two things that you can't, separate. But they're doing real groundwork on that thing. Whether you care about it or not is irrelevant. They're emailing people. They're talking to people around the situation. They're giving you names of people if they have them. They're giving you quotes if they have them. That's real journalist stuff. Do you see Meltzer doing that stuff today? Hey, I'm working on this big story. No. He's not doing that. When was the last time Meltzer did anything like that? And how does he get on his perch to tell PW Insider or Fightful, well, if you want to be friends with these corporations, you're not doing your job. Meanwhile, when somebody calls you biased, you're like, I got friends in both companies. You let the air out about balloon. What a ridiculous man. A ridiculous man in ridiculous times. So, let's get back into this thing. It's almost over, I promise. Taking their cues from Pritchard and Bischoff's success, spending time gutting Meltzer, other less popular podcasts have taken the same route in seeking to discredit Meltzer. While these hosts don't have the personal stakes that people like Pritchard and Bischoff have in burying Meltzer, they understand that there is an audience for that kind of content. And Meltzer is an easy target for people who lack critical thought or media literacy to attack. You lack critical thought. What is critical thinking, by the way? I would like to think I'm pretty good at that. If I'm not good at anything else, I'm pretty good at critical thinking. Media literacy, pretty good at critical thought though. And I'm pretty good at media literacy too. So I'm not seeing myself in this paragraph, but I'm sitting here saying to myself, like, man, why do you have to attack people who criticize Meltzer? Why do you care? I don't care. People attack folks all the time. I don't care. Why is Meltzer such a sacred cow that we can't criticize him? What is it about him that must be protected? And this is the closest thing to an answer I get. Wrestling has few definitive records or accounts of history. The ability to shape past events to fit a narrative is easier than in most other entertainment fields. Dave Meltzer is one of the only real sources for that kind of information, which makes him an attractive target for anyone to go after if they are making a point. Well, look, when was the last time Dave Meltzer wrote an award-winning book? Like a guy like a Tim Hornbaker, or a guy like, a Brian Solomon, who spends months and months and months researching one person or one subject, and then produces a definitive body of work on that subject. Like, these guys, sometimes they quote Meltzer. Okay? Sometimes they will go back into the old Wrestling Observers and they will, pull quotes from Meltzer. But in the end, they're going out and getting pictures themselves. They're going out doing interviews themselves. They're going out and doing these. Meltzer doesn't even do that. So he doesn't break big stories like, Vince McMahon getting busted with all the sex stuff. He doesn't even bust little stories or smaller stories, let's say, like CM Punk jumping ship to AEW. He doesn't even get involved with stuff like that. But he also doesn't write award-winning books. So what the fuck does he do all day? If he's supposed to be the greatest wrestling historian, he never wrote any books that anybody cares about. And he's supposed to be the great wrestling journalist. He hasn't broken a story in years. So what exactly are we? Okay, never mind. Never mind. Let's just go. I don't want to be here all day with this. Wrestling is full of people, both within and outside the industry, who want to be considered experts while also trying to shape a narrative that best suits them. That, more than anything, makes Meltzer public enemy number one, because his reporting flies in the face of many of those attempts. Oh my word. Oh my goodness. Saint Dave the Honest. Holy hell. Holy guacamole, man. These guys worship Meltzer, man. What the hell? A factor in all of this is that Meltzer himself gives off the impression he is relatively unbothered by the constant hostility aimed at him. While he is prone to arguing with bad-faced trolls on social media, Meltzer rarely even acknowledges the direct shots that are constantly being taken at him by the Pritchard and Bischoff-like characters. Yeah, because he typically has gone back and forth with those guys before, and he knows that they're just not going to agree on it, so it's a waste of his energy. And typically, Meltzer, I shouldn't say Meltzer, Pritchard and Bischoff, they do the same thing, occasionally. Everybody knows that most of what Meltzer is going to say is going to be stuff that they disagree with, because Meltzer wasn't in the room. He doesn't talk to any of the principal people involved. Again, sometimes he might get a good source who actually knows what they're talking about. Other times he's talking to the janitor and they're telling you what Vince McMahon is thinking, as if, the janitor is Jean Grey from the X-Men and can read people's minds. And folks are just like, oh, you lack critical thinking skills. It's like, well, if you're not talking directly to Vince, and you're not talking who Vince talked to, and you're not talking to anybody who was in the room, how the hell do you know what was going on in that room? You don't know. Critical thinking would tell you, unless you have direct information, you really don't have any information. You certainly can't provide your information as fact if you don't have direct evidence. Meltzer is comfortable letting his record speak for itself, and despite the constant criticism he receives, he continues to grow his business more than 40 years after he first launched it. While bashing Meltzer has become sport for some and business for others, Meltzer remains uncompromised by the criticism, wearing the disdain from untruthful sources as a badge of honor. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's just crazy, man. That's insane. It's people who are literally in the room saying, hey, Meltzer wasn't in the room with me and I didn't talk to him. And I don't think anybody I was talking to talked to him. This is incorrect. Well, you're a liar. Okay, how can you prove that I'm lying? How can you prove that I'm lying? I don't know, man. But because these guys don't really get into debates, they don't debate each other, really. And I don't expect them to. These guys are in their 60s. They're not going to go back and forth with this crap. It's just wrestling. People believe what they want to believe. None of it's going to end up in a, too far. Sometimes you'll get, in a history book, a conversation that, Meltzer says this in the Wrestling Observer, but you'll then see that Bischoff on his podcast has denied that, or Vince Russo on his podcast has denied it. But when you look at so many people who have been in the business and have said that Dave Meltzer was one of the greatest workers ever, like that's an Al Snow line, because he got people to believe he is the arbiter of truth, that he got the real story, despite the fact that he's never worked in the business and sometimes does not talk to the principal people involved. And then they'll give you that bullshit like, well, in the real media, quote unquote real media, oftentimes you don't talk directly to the person you're talking about. You're talking to a staffer, you're talking to, some intern somewhere, and they're giving you quotes or whatever. This person has an idea of what's going on. They might know. They may have seen the caller ID on the phone or something. They may have it came across a slip of paper. But you have to take anybody who is not using direct evidence, direct communication. I emailed this person, I called this person, I talked to this person, with a grain of salt. That's just common sense. You ever played telephone as a kid? If you've never played telephone before, it's a simple game. Line up a bunch of people, you write a sentence on a sheet of paper. You have one person read it and whisper it into the ear of the next person. And then you get to the end of the line and you see if what you wrote on that sheet of paper is the same thing that comes out of that person's mouth. Most of the time it's not. Because once somebody repeats what they've heard, their brain hears something different and rephrases it. And then it goes from person to person, being completely rephrased, until it comes out the other end, a completely different fucking sentence. And children play this game and realize, don't gossip. That's the moral of the story. Don't gossip. So quite often we cannot verify what Dave Meltzer is being told is being true. You know, we can't verify that stuff. So people are more apt to believe a Pritchard or a Bischoff or a Russo or whomever because they were more closely related to the story. They were in the room. They talked to the principal people involved. They have more information. You can say, well, Bischoff's a huckster. Okay, but can you prove him wrong about this issue? If you can, good. Then we can know on this issue we can disregard. But if you can't, then how can a guy who was in fucking San Jose at the time disprove it? He wasn't in the room. So that's all people are saying, man. Separate your facts, your opinions, and your assumptions. Separate your editorials and your historical pieces. It's great that you can do all those things. And Meltzer might be good at some of those things and better at others. But those things need to be separated. And he also needs to not be lionized like he created this thing. He didn't create this shit. You know, he is the most popular. He is the biggest platform. But he didn't create being in the wrestling media. There were real sports figures who used to cover pro wrestling long before Meltzer showed up. And they did a lot of what Meltzer claims to do. They went in there and debunked that wrestling was real. They would debunk the houses. They would debunk pay. They would debunk all these different things. And Meltzer just continued the tradition. That's all. You can give him credit for doing it for so long and for making that information palatable for a very niche audience. Because a guy who's a sports writer will go into a wrestling show, assume everybody else thinks that it's fake, write in the paper, half real, half fake. The guy might be friends with the promoter, so he might write it like it's real. And other guys who have nothing but disdain for the business will write like it's shit. But that was here nor there, and it wasn't national. Meltzer took this stuff national. He sent his paper all over the country. You can give him credit for what he did, but also he deserves the criticism for some of that stuff too. And I think that's fair. Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.
Got another one of them popping at the mouth or the side of his neck when he pouts. No argument, no rebuttal from. He ain't from my town. I don't know him, so I'm guessing he's a